Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Los Gatos' Joint Town Council Parking Authority Redevelopment Agency meeting of January 20th, 2009. Before we move to roll call, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn their cell phones off or to vibrate out of courtesy to others. I'd also like to remind everyone, if you want to address the council this evening under verbal communications or any item on the agenda, please be sure to fill out one of the speaker cards in front of you and return it to the clerk's staff on my left. I strongly encourage you to write down your email address so you can periodically receive information directly from the town about community events and happenings. I'll now ask Jackie Rose to call the roll.
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Pruszynski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Diane McNutt.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Mike Wasserman.
Here. Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's my honor to call forward the 2008 Central Coast Section football champions, otherwise known as the Los Gatos High School Football Wildcats, and their coach, Butch Catalico. If you'll wait just a moment and allow me to go to the front podium. All right, Coach, I'd ask if you'd come up here and join me on the side. Make sure nobody kicks his knee. And I'd ask that his team join us on either side. Please come on forward and maybe turn in an angle so you can all fit in and give the cameras a good shot of you. Put the best looking ones up front. Whoa. Table forward. Why don't you get some help?
Guys, just move the table forward a little bit.
There we go. That works. All right, we're all in there. All right. There is no doubt that the success of the Los Gatos High School football team can be attributed to its talented and hardworking athletes. But what distinguishes the Los Gatos High football teams from others is its extraordinary and inspirational coach, Butch Catalico. 2 weeks ago, Coach Catalico was named All-Mercury News Football Co-Coach of the Year and is already a member of the California Coaches Hall of Fame. But we'll hear more about the coach and his championship team after they lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, Coach, and if you can just start it, I'm sure the team will join in. The flag's right over there.
All right, guys. It's not the alma mater. This is the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Before reading the commendation, I'm going to share a few words from a letter Coach Catalico wrote his players after their championship win, just 5 days after the passing of a player named Mike Halpin. I've heard the coach say the only thing that makes him cry is when he loses a football game. But from the tone of this letter, you can certainly hear his emotions. I know, this is from the coach's letter. I know we all learned a lot about life the last week of the season. Losing Mikey is the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with as a coach. We learned about many things throughout the season. We learned to fight through adversity, enjoy victory, and not let defeat drag us down. We learned it is okay to cry and okay to lean on others and allow them to lean on you. We learned that there is strength in numbers, but also great strength in the power of one. Somewhere along the way, you all stopped being boys and became men. We stopped being a group of individuals playing a game and became a team. Maybe the best thing we learned is not to take life or football for granted. Almost everything can be taken away from you at any time. Your belief in yourself is what is necessary to see you through those times. Friends are to be cherished, just as loved ones are. Support of your teammates is a powerful thing. Now we are champions. Nothing can ever change that. We learned that being the best takes a great amount of sacrifice and hard work. Hopefully we learned that it is well worth the effort. In the end, I think the one thing we will all remember is that 29 to 23 equals 52. And 52 was a special person. Each of you needs to remember that you made Mike Halpin a champion on the field as a football player that night, and that Mike made each of you champions by what he gave to you while he was with us. God bless the Wildcats of 2008, CCS champions, signed Coach Catalico. Let's give a round of applause, please. Now I would like to further recognize Coach Catalico and his team with this commendation. This is a commendation from the town of Los Gatos, and it's signed by the town council. It says, whereas Coach Butch Catalico has coached the Los Gatos High School football team for 32 years, 23 of those as head coach. And whereas Coach Catalico has an overall winning record of 229 wins, 49 losses, and 3 ties, for an 82% winning percentage, with 16 league titles and 10 Central Coast section titles since 1988. And whereas the Los Gatos High School football team recently won its 11th CCS title on December 6, 2008, defeating Palo Alto High School by a score of 29-23. Whereas this championship team won all 3 playoff games by scoring touchdowns in the final quarter, a feat believed never to have been done before, which took great effort and strength of character, traits that Coach Catalico and his team demonstrated throughout the season. And whereas the victory was dedicated to and in memory of linebacker Mikey Halpin, number 52. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby commend and congratulate Coach Butch Catalico for his many years of success and leadership as head football coach at Los Gatos High School and the Los Gatos High School football team on its 11th CCS title.
Very quickly, I'd like to thank Mayor Wasserman and the council and the town of Los Gatos. It has always been our goal as coaches to remind the boys that they play for themselves first, their families, their school, but also the town of Los Gatos. We represent the town of Los Gatos. We are the Los Gatos Wildcats, and it's an important thing to us that we are representatives of this town. So we appreciate the town recognizing the hard work that these men have put in this year, and that some of them have put in for 4 years, and some of them still have some time to put in. We really appreciate the parents and the other people who have shown up tonight, as you have done, especially 2 principals here tonight, administrators, Coach Mike Shalaba and his couple of youngins over there. But if I could, the real heart of this football team, despite what anyone tells you, are the young men up here and the sacrifices and the effort they put in every year. If I could introduce just their 3 captains to begin with, Chris LaBeouf, stand up and wave to everybody, Chris, Spencer Havens, and Craig Zeider. They are our season captains, and of course the remainder of the team and a couple of the players who I know tonight didn't make it here because they had homework to do, and they're getting their homework done. These guys got their homework done early so they could be here tonight. We really appreciate this. This will find a place up on the wall, and as the boys know, anything that gets up on the wall is special. So if we could, I would ask you to stand up and put your hands together one more time for all of the young men who have gone through this program, not just through the last 32 years that I've coached, but since the invention in 1924 when Los Gatos High School decided to give up rugby and play a real game, American football. Thank you.
There you go. We've got enough pins for all of you. If we're a little short, we can get you more, but I'm sure we're fine. Gentlemen, yep. And gentlemen, thank you all for coming here this evening, and you can get back to your studies now. You're welcome. We'll give the team just a minute to clear the chambers, and then we'll continue with the meeting. Take it outside, Teddy. Okay, returning to our agenda, we're now at the closed session report. I'll turn to Town Attorney Mr. Korb for a closed session report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. Council did meet in closed session tonight for a public employee performance evaluation and conference with labor negotiator, both concerning the town manager. Neither discussion was completed tonight. Will be continued on another day. There are no reportable decisions tonight, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Korb, and I'll go back to where I just was. And I'd like to ask Patricia Kessel, a Los Gatos resident who is accepting a proclamation on behalf of the Red Cross, to join me at the podium. And is Gail Roner also here, Patricia? Yes. Gail, why don't you join us up here, too? Thank you. So I have Patricia Kessel here on my left, a Los Gatos resident, accepting a proclamation on behalf of the Red Cross to join tonight, and Gail Roner of the American Red Cross. Northern California chapter is also here. Welcome, ladies. Thank you. We also have a proclamation for you this evening. The proclamation says, whereas the American Red Cross Northern California Blood Services Region distributes 130,000 pints of blood per year for the protection of local patients, yet fewer than 100,000 pints of blood are collected in the region annually. And whereas one blood donation may help save 3 lives, and whereas some 40% of the public is eligible to donate, yet fewer than 5% do donate blood, there is a need for additional healthy, regular, volunteer donors to join the ranks of those who already give of themselves so generously. And whereas there is a need for civic and service organizations and businesses to sponsor blood drives. And I thank you both for all that you do for the Red Cross. Now therefore be it resolved. I, Mike Wasserman, by the virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim the month of January 2009 as National Blood Donor Month within our town, and urge all citizens to pay tribute to those among us who donate for others in need. I urge citizens in good health to donate regularly. I also urge all civic and service organizations and businesses, if they have not already done so, to form blood donor groups and to provide blood for others. This was proclaimed on the 20th day of January 2009 in the town of Los Gatos. Patricia, would you like to add a few words?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wasserman, and the Town Council for recognizing the importance of National Blood Donor Month. Organizations in Los Gatos alone have hosted 13 blood drives in this last year of 2008, producing 622 pints. That means as many as 1,866 people may have been helped through this life-saving act. We thank you so much for this acknowledgement.
Our pleasure. And again, thank you for all the work you do, and thank you for representing the American Red Cross.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello. I'm still there. Thanks. There's Todd. Thank you. Okay, now we're at the council and the town manager reports portion of our agenda. I'll first look to my fellow council members for anything they'd like to share. Seeing none, I will turn to our town manager, Greg Larson, for anything he'd like to mention as soon as he catches his breath.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, Happy New Year, our first meeting of the new year. Only one item we wanted to report on. We learned during the holiday recess, actually earlier this month, that negotiations between the current and prospective owner-operators of Los Gatos Community Hospital had not been fruitful in terms of negotiating, all parties negotiating and agreeing to a continuous operating agreement that left the current operators, Tenet Hospital, with no choice given state law to announce 90 days in advance of a prospective closure of their facility as required by state law. So it has been announced by Tenet that they will be closing the hospital on April 10th, and the new owner-operator has indicated it could take as long as 3 months or more for them to start up operations anew. Over the end of last week and today, your staff has been involved in discussions with all of the involved parties, trying to encourage an accelerated reopening of the hospital to benefit not only our community, but the broader Silicon Valley region. And those discussions will continue during the weeks ahead. Equally important, staff is beginning to develop a public notification program so that whatever length the closure ultimately is, be it April 10th through Labor Day, shorter or longer, whatever the end result is of the private parties, that we will be able to notify our community of what those dates are so that alternative medical services can be sought by our constituents. That concludes staff report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. And I have one thing I wanted to ask. As the KCAT cameras go around, and for the people in attendance tonight, the beautiful artwork that we have around us in the chambers is courtesy of the Los Gatos advanced art class from Los Gatos High School. Wonderful, wonderful jobs that these students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors have done, many trying to replicate the masters, and they've done an excellent job. We're now on the consent item portion, and before the council takes any action on those consent items, I'll look to my fellow council members for any items that need to be pulled. Seeing none, I'll look to the public for any items that need to be pulled. Seeing none, I'll look to council for action regarding the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Motion made to approve by Mr. Przinsky, seconded by Mr. Rice. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of passing consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Okay, we're now on to the verbal communications portion of tonight's agenda. I'm going to call people up to speak based on the speaker cards they've submitted. Thank you, Stephanie. And each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak about whatever they wish not on tonight's agenda. And it looks like our leadoff batter speaker will be Hey Citizen Ray.
Hey. All right. Thank you.
Welcome. And Kim Firm, you will follow Citizen Ray.
Hey, it was fun sitting with a bunch of football players again. Yeah. Me back. I was waiting for somebody to call signals. Didn't happen. So I relaxed. Hey, I thought that was funny. Thank you. And we need to have a little laugh because we're getting into the Citizen Ray's feet to the coals portion of the program. Feet to the coals, okay? And I'm going to leave Mr. Rice out of my comments because he wasn't around when the subject of what I'm going to talk about took place. And that subject is the sale of our park property, 13.5 acres in Vasona, for a paltry $6 million. Land to be duplicated elsewhere in Los Gatos would be in the neighborhood of $32 to $34 million. So how could you possibly make a deal with the county and give away that gorgeous property right in the middle of town with kids on their bikes from all over Los Gatos could ride to? How could you possibly do it for such a paltry sum? The county, hooray for the county. They didn't buy it, they stole it. Because you people clueless as to what the value of that property was in perpetuity to the town of Los Gatos, okay? Furthermore, they had $185 million in an uncommitted fund for parks. They could easily have afforded a proper price for the property. Unbelievable, okay? So I am so disgusted. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get over it, but I want to give you a little quote from the movie Forrest Gump, okay? When Forrest asked his mama, "Mama, how do I know when somebody's stupid?" And his mama said, "Forrest, honey, stupid is as stupid does." And I want to tell you, you four qualify for Forrest Gump's mama's explanation. Stupid is as stupid does. Unbelievable. And the kids of Los Gatos, the future in perpetuity, will pay.
Thank you very much, Citizen Ray.
Happy to be here. Always happy to be here.
No more. I'm quick on the warnings. Number 2, Kim Firm. And Kim, thank you for including your email address to receive our What's News from the town.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Kim Firm, and I'm representing United Way Silicon Valley, the 211 program for Santa Clara County. I'm the director, and I'm here to tell you, just to give you a basic update of 211 for the calendar year of 2008. And in the packets that are being passed out to you, have the specific data for the town of Los Gatos. So my purpose tonight is to outreach to you and to the audience about 211, a program of United Way Silicon Valley. I want to say Happy New Year to you and to everyone. During these difficult times, it is critical to be knowledgeable of the resources available to people who have recently been laid off, to people who have financial difficulties because of adjustable mortgage rates, and to people on fixed incomes who may need rent or utility assistance, for example. 211 is a free 3-digit phone number that connects you with hundreds of health and human services in the community. A trained, caring professional will help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is available in 140-plus languages. In the 211 database, in the town of Los Gatos, there are 25 agencies headquartered and 32 program sites serving people with health and human service needs. Our call center serves 201 Los Gatos residents in the year 2008. And the top needs were basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter, criminal justice and legal services, and community and international services, income support, and employment. Just a few agencies that received referrals from 211 are the Police Department, City Hall, West Valley Community Services, the YMCA. And so the one-page summary that you have has some of that detail. So we just wanted to tell the town of Los Gatos thank you very much for your continued partnership. We look forward to answering any questions that you might have. and to help maximize the effectiveness of providing information referral to residents in your town. Not only does 211 have daily information referral, we also have the emergency preparedness component in times of disaster. And in participation with the Santa Clara County Office of Emergency Services, we're working on a reverse notification system so that in the event of an evacuation, 211 may be utilized to help evacuate people and reverse calls. 76% of the U.S. population is served by 211, and it's available in 47 states. If you have any more questions or if you'd like more information, I have brochures for the audience as well as for you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Firm.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. And that's it under verbal communications. One comment I just want to make about an earlier comment for the people that followed the issue regarding the land in Vasona. The land in Vasona was deeded, could not be built on. So when the professional appraisals were done, they compared it to other lands that could not be built on, did not compare it to land selling, say, on Los Gatos Boulevard, where you can build shopping centers and homes. The nice thing about all that is that the town of Los Gatos still has that parkland available to it, and the $6 million that was received was set aside in a separate account, and the town is pursuing youth field opportunities. Now we move on to item number 11, and Mr. Larson, I'm just going to double check with you that our gentleman regarding the hazardous vegetation is still not here, and we're going to move it after 13.
Correct.
Okay, so council, we're going to take item number 11, push it behind number 13 until that gentleman's able to appear here. He was going to be here at the regular time, which he was thinking of Monday, but he had a previous commitment on a Tuesday, so he'll be here after our number 13. We now move on to item number 12, adopting a resolution authorizing the continued use of supplemental local law enforcement service funds to provide funding for 2 full-time police officers assigned as motorcycle traffic officers. I understand we don't have a staff report, but we do have the opportunity of questions from council of staff.
Police Chief Scott Seaman is available if the council has any questions. This is an annual recurring item we bring forward to the council.
Thank you. Council, any questions of staff, of our chief, regarding item number 12? Seeing none, I'll look to the public for any questions. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion and turn to council for conversation or a motion. Mr. Przinski, Councilman Przinski.
Mr. Mayor, I want to move to adopt a resolution authorizing the continued use of supplemental local law enforcement services funds to provide funding for 2 full-time police officers assigned to motorcycle for traffic duty.
Motion has been made. I look for a second. Have a second from Councilmember Spector. Now turn to council for further discussion on this matter. Seeing none. I have in my notes here, Mr. Korb, closed public hearing, but I don't think we need.
You did.
Well, I understood that you
close it
did
already.
open and close the public hearing.
Okay, so I don't need to do that again now. Got it? So I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. There you go, Chief. And now do we actually... No, we actually adopted the resolution. The motion did so. We're done. Thank you. What an efficient government we have. Okay, we are now moving on to item number 13, which is to consider a request for approval of a plan development amendment to allow accessory structures on a property located at Shannon Valley Ranch, Shannon Oaks Lane, and Mountain Laurel Lane. I believe the applicant, Kevin Thompson, is here. Correct? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And is there anyone from GHC Valley Ranch, Shannon Valley Ranch here? Okay, wonderful. You'll have your opportunities in 10 minutes to speak after we hear from staff and any council questions. So I will now look, I believe, to Mr. Lortz to make the staff report. Mr. Lortz, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Wasserman, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. This application does have to do with Shannon Valley Ranch out there at Shannon Oaks and Mountain Laurel Lanes. If you could flip, thanks. In terms of background, Shannon Valley Ranch is a 80-acre planned development at the corner of Shannon and Hicks. The new names of the two streets out there are Shannon Oaks Lane and Mountain Laurel Lane. The PD was approved in March of 2002 for 14 homes, 13 of which are being developed by Greenbrier, and one was retained by the seller of the property. Maximum floor area of the homes, which were established by the PD, are 4,850 square feet and an average of 4,650 square feet. The question of floor area came up during architecture and site approval, where the council approved 800 square foot garages. The plan development amendment was approved in 2006, which had to do with a retaining wall on lots 6 through 11. 10 of the homes out at the project have been sold. The owners from time to time are requesting to add accessory structures. At the time of the PD approval, the town had no floor area limitation for lots larger than 30,000 square feet. And subsequent to the adoption of the plan development ordinance, the council adopted the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines in January of 2004. The owner of Lot 11 is requesting to construct an accessory building, which is a combination pool house and game room. The Conceptual Development Advisory Committee considered this single lot request in March of last year, and the minutes are included with the Planning Commission staff report. At some urging on the part of town staff, the developer joined in the application, so the question regarding accessory structures can be answered for the entire development. So what we have is co-applicants. The proposal is to amend the plan development ordinance to allow accessory structures that are in compliance with the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. The proposed accessory building on Lot 11 is consistent with those guidelines, and if the plan development amendment is approved, architecture and site approval will be required. 3 approval processes are stipulated in the Hillside standards. For less than 450 square feet, a building permit is required. For structures between 450 and 600 square feet, a minor residential development application is required. And then larger than 600 square feet, architecture and site approval is required. In this particular instance, the Planning Commission action is to recommend approval of the plan development amendment with 3 added stipulations: that there would be no more than 1 accessory structure per lot, that the maximum size of that structure would be 750 square feet, and that the structures requiring architecture and site approval be reviewed by the Planning Commission as opposed to DRC. The recommended action, which is also contained in the desk item that you were provided with this evening, is from staff, and that recommendation is to approve the PD amendment, but also to modify condition 9 to read as follows: that accessory structures allowed provided they are in compliance with the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, and they shall be reviewed and processed in accordance with those standards and guidelines. The difference between the recommended action and the Planning Commission's action, recommended action, is that staff is recommending that we follow the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines for the lots out there, that the PD ordinance be amended to allow accessory structures, but they must be in compliance with the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, and they'll be processed in accordance with those guidelines. The Planning Commission, on the other hand, recommended that the maximum size of the accessory structure could be 750 square feet, even though under the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines they may be entitled to more than that. The Planning Commission also indicated that if a grading permit was required, they would not be allowed to build the accessory structure. And then thirdly, that any of the structures that require architecture and site approval, which would be anything between more than 600 square feet, would require Planning Commission consideration. So that concludes staff's report. We're certainly here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lortz. We'll start with council. Questions of Mr. Lortz regarding his presentation. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Is paragraph, I guess it's 9, the only one that's being amended from the original PD?
There is one amendment on the first page of the ordinance, line or section 7, and this is page 1 of 24 on attachment 2. And what we did there is said that accessory structures in compliance with the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines were allowed, consistent with condition 9.
All right, and the other question is, assuming that this motion, the staff's recommendation is approved and these items go to DRC, and the DRC looks to see if the application complies with the Hillside Standards and Guidelines, can you give me some idea of how the DRC does that? I mean, do they just say, okay, it's less than 600 square feet and so we approve it? Does the body use discretion? What is the process within the DRC?
The DRC functions very similarly to the Planning Commission. If there's tree removals, that would be an issue. If there is grading, that would be an issue. If there's any drainage issues, that would be an issue. If there are neighborhood concerns, those would be issues. Architectural compatibility would have to be taken into consideration.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Lortz? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the applicants forward, and that can include Mr. Thompson and the representative for GHC Shannon Valley Ranch. Please come on forward to the podium. You'll have up to 10 minutes to speak. Then the public will have an opportunity to speak based on cards submitted, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut if need be.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kevin Thompson. I reside at 287 Mountain Laurel Lane, and I won't take 10 minutes, but I do have some comments. I'd just like to reinforce some items. Nobody likes to amend PDs. I realize that, because the time, money, public hearings, and the work involved that goes into developing them, particularly if it's a good one. I think ordinance, the original ordinance, 2097, developed in March of 2002, it was later amended to 2150, is 99% okay. However, it contains a couple of glaring deficiencies, in my opinion. There's no specific mention of accessory structures at all, and it was developed, obviously, before the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines was put in place in January of 2004, so it has tighter limitations on home footprints for large lots. Now, as such, any background improvements that the residents in the development want that include structures, people find they have ambiguous standards in place. We are asking tonight that Ordinance 2150 be amended so that accessory structures are included that comply with Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines, which has gone through extensive review work and review processes and public hearings. We're also asking that no artificial size restrictions be put on the accessory structures, except that dictated by the development intensity in the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. And again, that would take away a strict limitation of 750 and allow fluctuations depending on the floor area, the FARs. Doing this will mean residents in Shannon Valley Ranch will abide by the same standards as all other hillside residents in Los Gatos. That's all I have. I'll entertain any questions.
Mr. Thompson, before we go to that, Does the representative for Shannon Valley Ranch wish to add? You're still on the same 10 minutes.
Yes, this is Tim Stanley with Greenbrier Homes, representing the developer. I'm just here to answer any questions that the council might have, and just add, the point that it's been the opinion of the developer that the approval, that we are not looking to overturn any portion of the PD, that the actual approval with respect to secondary structures we believe to be unaddressed, many years ago when this was approved, and we believe that certainly staff could attest to the fact that we've had discussions over time about whether or not secondary structures were allowed under our PD development, and I think that's what's brought us here today, as was referenced by Mr. Lortz, at the request of the city to help get a consistency of development for the whole, consistency of approval for the entire development. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council, I'll look to you first for questions of the applicant. All right, seeing none at this time, I look for cards regarding agenda item 13, and I don't have any. Anyone wishing to speak? Citizen Ray.
Yes, indeed. I've been in Los Gatos for 10 years, and I remember very clearly the gist of the public hearings on the Greenbrier development on Hicks Road. I took part in all of it, okay? And the main thrust was to permit development there, but semi-rural development. Nothing more than that. The whole idea was to keep the density down, the size down, the architecture down, okay? And it was passed, I think, appropriately, and you drive out there today and it's pretty darn nice. It's way back in there, and you don't want to have too many families living in one house with too many children, because the school district is half an hour, 45 minutes away in Los Gatos. It's a potential problem. And based on my years' experience with accessory structures, you have to be real careful, particularly in Los Gatos, because there's always an application coming in if you don't have control, if you don't have rules and regulation regulating the potential size of cabanas. First thing you know, if you don't put a cap on the size, there'll be 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 square foot cabanas, accessory structure, 30 foot tall. You got to have a height limitation. 15 feet is a normal standard, okay? You got to have all that in place, and don't you dare think of bypassing any of that. And the Planning Commission, I think, hit it right on the nail on the head with a maximum size square footage, okay? And you need to have a height limitation as well. So those are my thoughts for the minute, okay, for the moment. In the public interest. Only in the public interest.
Thank you. Now we'll call the applicants, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Stanley, or representatives, applicants, whatever, if you'll come back up. And if you have any comments you want to make following the comments that you've heard, and then I'm going to turn to council for questions.
We have no comments.
None. Okay, that closes that portion. If you can remain there for just a minute in case council has any questions of you, that'll save you going up and down. Council, any questions of the applicants? No, you may be seated. Thank you. I'll now turn to council for a lively discussion. Who wants to open it up? No. Nobody. Mr. Brzezinski.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Having been through that lengthy and onerous task of coming to the conclusion on this property over the course of what seemed like years, the group that was primarily engaged with the community in that process was the General Plan Committee. And I recall the number of times wherein members of the public, and Mr. Davis was included in that, presented in this chamber regarding those things that we might want to do to establish a residential community within a rural environment. In fact, the direction was, how can we actually create a best practices development in that area? If you recall, at the early in its time, that was used as a horse stable, had a horse rink for people to bring their horses and to exercise them. There were a lot of outbuildings that were unattractive, to say the least, and there was a proposal earlier to put a school there. And all of those went by the by as Greenbrier came forward with their proposal. And anyone who was with Greenbrier at the time knows how difficult it was to go from the initial proposal of, I believe, 30 residential units to the end result of the 13 to 14 that we've got now. But the direction of travel was, how do we create this rural environment within the context of a residential community? I was out there this last week, and I eagerly await the passage of time and the growth of those trees, because I think what we're going to get there is really what we decided so many years ago we were attempting to achieve. And the open space, the ability of the wildlife to transit that space without being inhibited, the open feeling, all of that does speak to what the original intent was. And in the Planning Commission minutes, there was reference to the number of hours that people spent developing this planned development proposal, all of which I think have had fruition. Now, the 800 square foot garage, my recollection was that was an accommodation by council to acknowledge the fact that we did not want to have a lot of storage sheds and so forth placed on the properties. Because of the high visibility, there are no closed fences out there. Everything is open fence, keeping with the intent of this rural community. People who would choose to live in this community had to choose also to give up some privacy for the sake of the rural character. But the 800-foot garage was intended to both house automobiles and those extra toys that people have in their possession, so that those things did not accumulate outside in the environment. This was a well thought through plan, and I think the cooperation of the neighborhood, the council and planning commission, as well as the general plan committee and the developer at that time, achieved a really good outcome, and it was a hard-fought battle to get there. Now, as I heard the proposal and I looked at the property again, I realized that indeed there was a component that was not addressed, and that's the question of auxiliary structures. I visited your property. I saw the story pole accommodation and realized that it was basically invisible, that your home shields the structure from Shannon Road, and the hillside behind you shields it from most of the properties up on Santa Rosa. And my conclusion was that it's in keeping with the intent of the earlier proposal, and therefore it's not intrusive. And as I looked at the other sites, I could not imagine a build out of those sites, given the restrictions of the properties themselves, how there could be anything that would be in any ways imitative of what Mr. Davis described as a 30-foot, 1,200 square foot structure. I think that it also is appropriate for us to acknowledge the fact that our hillside design standards do capture what our intentions are, and I believe that that they do give us sufficient protections, and that the Planning Commission will intervene at the appropriate time should our normal processes not be able to accommodate what an application or a response from the neighbors might be. So I'm going to make the motion for purposes of discussion that we uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation and approve the Plan Development Application PD 0803 with the single amendment that item number 9 that talks to accessory structures exclude that one piece of language that restricted the structures to 750, and that would be as noted in the desk item we received tonight under number 9, accessory structures, and we'll go from there if we have a second.
Thank you. Before I look for a second, Mr. Brzezinski, in the motion that you just made, I was starting to write it down, but I couldn't write as quickly as you were able to speak. Your motion is approving the PD amendment, modifying condition number 9, yada, yada, going through the hillside design standards, and does away with the maximum size, 750 square foot?
It's the amendment to number 9 that was proposed to us, and that replaces number 9 as we received it from the Planning Commission, which included the sentence, one accessory structure shall be allowed per lot and shall not exceed 750 square feet. Everything else I think is the same language except that one sentence.
Okay. Thank you. Motion on the floor. Looking for a second to the motion for purposes of consideration. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Second.
Second. We now have discussion among council regarding the motion on the floor before we call for any action. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you. Just briefly, a couple of points that I wanted to make. I wouldn't want anyone to think that by eliminating the recommended language by the Planning Commission that means that it's an open-ended field day for construction on these sites. The Hillside Guidelines has already in place very specific limitations on what can be built. And so I think what this motion does is puts the residents of this development in a fair and equitable position with all of the other residents in town who live in hillside properties. So I feel very comfortable that we are well protected by the language of the Hillside Guidelines, and that evolved after this project was approved, and so it's a logical progression in my mind.
Thank you. Now, and I've got a question to Mr. Lortz, if I may. Mr. Lortz, in the Planning Commission action, it said not allowed if a grading permit is required. And I just wondered, given the Hillside Guidelines, building envelopes, etc., for the other lots in the area, how likely do you envision a grading permit being required to build an accessory structure that meets our hillside development standards and guidelines?
The grading ordinance is a fairly complex document, and grading is defined by another number of things. Typically, people think of it as 50 cubic yards, but it could be a removal of vegetation of more than 1,000 square feet that can trigger a grading permit. So there are a lot of things that trigger a grading permit that most people don't think would necessarily trigger a grading permit, although some people think our grading ordinance isn't tough enough. So we didn't think that that language was appropriate. If a grading permit is required, that is subordinate to the real application, which is either the architecture and site approval or any other application, building permit for a structure itself.
Okay, and one more question, if I may, and then I'll look back to council one more time for any further questions before we call for a vote. The number of accessory structures per lot, given that the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines are governing this development regarding accessory structures, what possibilities exist there with the different size and shapes of lots?
Well, because the PD is fairly well built out, there's really very little more that can be allowed on any given lot. much of it was taken up by the size of the home.
And the open
gr-
space?
And the garage.
Okay.
So there's really only probably one more structure that's going to be allowed, and that would vary depending on the floor area ratio of that property.
Okay, on a lot-by-lot basis?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions of staff, fellow council members? Okay, none. Then I will look for a vote, action on the motion made by Councilmember Przinsky, seconded by Vice Mayor McNutt. All in favor?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
I understand, and Mr. Pazinski can correct me if I'm wrong, that he has made a motion to start the actions necessary to introduce the ordinance that is proposed to council tonight. I believe the motion would be starts with A on your list of actions.
Making the findings.
And I'm assuming that the motion included the recommended findings of general plan and hillside guideline consistency.
Actually, I was going to make that separately.
Okay.
So if I might.
So the motion now is yours, Mr. Przinsky, along with making the required findings?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, since we have a motion and a second, I would like to make the required findings, which are contained in attachment A. The findings require consistency with the town's general plan, and the proposed zone change is internally consistent with the general plan. In addition, it requires compliance with the hillside development standards and guidelines. And again, the proposed amendment is in compliance with the hillside development standards and guidelines, and that does require a motion.
Okay. So we have the motion. You're making the required findings. Do we need a second on that as well? So is the seconder seconding that as well? Okay, that's seconded. Now I think I call for the question before we direct the clerk administrator to read the title.
That's correct.
So we'll call for council for a vote of, we'll call for yea right now. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, which was the motion and the making the required findings. Now we'll direct the clerk administrator to read the title of the ordinance. And you're on.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending Plan Development PD-99-2 relative to accessory structures and repealing Ordinance 2150 for the Shannon Valley Ranch project at Shannon and Hicks Roads, Shannon Oaks, and Mountain Laurel Lanes.
Thank you very much. And
Mr.
now we
Mayor,
need a motion. Yes, sir.
If I might, I'd like to
Councilman
move
Przinsky.
to waive the reading of the ordinance.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Councilman Przinsky.
And with the mayor's permission, I would like to introduce the ordinance to effectuate Plan Development PD 0701.
Motion is made. Seconded again. No discussion. Call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
That ends item number 13. And now we're moving back to number 11.
Correct. Okay.
And we have Todd Capurso.
Mayor.
I think so. A little clean shaven there. That's it. Didn't recognize him for a minute there. That's what I was saying.
A clean-shaven Director of Parks and Public Works.
Yes, we do.
Just like we'd like our weeds to be clean-shaven.
Clean-shaven weeds.
So, with that, there is no staff report. This is an annual item that comes before the council that requires a public hearing. As we just discussed, Director of Parks and Public Works, Todd Capurso, is available to answer any questions, as is Mr. Mo Kumri from Santa Clara County, who handles this program countywide.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. This is item number 11, hazardous vegetation and weeds, regarding adopting a resolution ordering the abatement of hazardous vegetation, a.k.a. weeds. Questions of staff from council? None. Speaker cards from the public? None. Public hearing closed? Done. Council discussion? None. All right, now I think we'll take a 10-minute break. No, we'll look for some action regarding agenda item number 11. Council. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Sure, I'll do it. I'll move to adopt resolution ordering abatement of hazardous vegetation, AKA weeds.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Looking to council for discussion. Seeing none. Closing the discussion, calling for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. What is the problem in the federal government?
And the state.
State. Honest to goodness. Okay, we're on to other business. You good? All right. Number 14, which is the new Los Gatos Library project. We're going to review the final conceptual design for the new library and discuss the negotiation and execution of an agreement with Nolan Tam Architects for the schematic design through construction, administrative services for the new Los Gatos Library. So we're going to look, I believe, to Assistant Town Manager Pamela Jacobs to give the staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. As you noted, we are presenting the final conceptual design for the new library tonight, and in a minute I'll turn it over to our architects to do that. This final conceptual design is based on the feedback received from council and the public in previous meetings. If the council has any additional feedback tonight, we will incorporate that in the final conceptual design, which will then go through the environmental review process before proceeding to the detailed design and construction process. I would like to note that the cost estimate for the final conceptual design remains within the $18.4 million budget. And as council is aware, the additional costs for the fixtures, furniture, and equipment will be raised by the Friends of the Library. This has been the plan from the beginning of the library project. Also tonight, staff is recommending that we enter into another agreement with Nolan Tam Architects based on their performance and their knowledge of the project. This next agreement would take us from schematic design through construction administrative services. And their fee is about $1.8 million. That's about 12% of the construction budget, representing 10% for basic services and about 2% for special services. This is within the standard percentage of architects' fees for projects of this scale and this complexity and the comprehensive nature of their services. An important thing that I would like to note that one part of the contract will ensure that if we, for some reason, receive inordinately high bids as we go out to bid, there will be a term in the agreement that will require the architects to do redesign if those bids are inordinately high. And this is to avoid what happened during the first bidding process for the police department. So we are going to include that in the agreement. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Knoll of Nolan Tam Architects to present the final conceptual design. And subsequently, he and I and Peggy Conway, the library director, will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Well, what I'd like to do is sort of walk through the where we are in the design. There are a few new things, and there are a number of things that you've already seen pretty much back in our meeting in December, so I'll go over those fairly quickly. The plans for the library, as our principles that we're using are as we had before, which is it's going to be warm and inviting is sort of the central theme that we have. It's going to work within the Civic Center, responding to nature and bringing those sort of natural materials and colors and feeling into the building, in keeping with the spirit of Los Gatos, and creating sort of grand spaces inside that are comfortable. Lots of views, both inward and outward. We're going to be a very energy efficient building and achieve the goal of LEED Silver, if not better, and have these sustainable features that are out there visible for people so that we can use them as an educational opportunity. This is the site plan. This is exactly the same plan that we showed you back in December, so I won't sort of spend any more time on it because I think you're familiar, but it shows the library at the back of the site behind the Civic Center and the parking as we had it before. The sections of the building are exactly the same as we showed you in December. And this is the preferred elevation that you all in December decided was the one that we would pursue. So this is the basis upon which we're moving forward in the conceptual design. And as part of the conceptual design package, we did produce the elevations of 4 of the buildings. And again, they are conceptual in nature. And these are sort of more the flat views of what you would see. The north elevation corresponds to the one that we just saw in perspective view. It is very glassy. The whole upper floor is very glassy facing north. With the north light, it brings in a lot of light to the building without heat gain. There are portions of it that are solid, but quite a bit of it is glass. On the south side elevation, which has much more intense sun and faces back against the hillside, the openings are smaller and more shaded. But still, there's quite a bit of glass back there, so we're expecting a lot of light coming into the library. The other thing you can see up here at the top of the north elevation is that clear story that goes down the center of the building, bringing the light into the central part of the library. The east and west elevations are much more closed down because that is some of the most difficult sunlight to control. The building really faces north and south, and we have selected views on these. The staff area on the east elevation is down here with the staff entrance, the teen area and the pop-out for the teen area here, and then back into some of the library areas on the second floor there.
If I can interrupt for just a minute, please feel free to pull that microphone off so that when you're looking at the screen, you can still be speaking in there. Thank you.
There, how about that? And then on the west elevation, which is one of the most difficult ones to control, the children's area is down here, and there actually is a sort of a children's garden area down here on the lower floor. And then the adult area has some large windows at the end of that sort of axis, and so that as you come into the library there, that sort of central space is continue with light at the end, and then windows on either side. But these, again, are going to have shading devices on them so that that direct sun doesn't come in. The materials are going to be, the kind of materials that we showed you here when we were here last, brick, terracotta, stone, possibly stucco, natural materials, depending on the budget. One of the things that we've done since we saw you last is we've started to really sort of get more detailed about what the floor plan is going to be. So I'd like to take the opportunity to walk you through. The plaza is out here in the parking area. The front entrance comes into a lobby here, and this is an area that has glass all the way across the back. So as you come in here, you're going to see right through the building into a garden at the back that's tucked up against the hillside. There's a grand stairway that leads you to the second floor. Directly to the left is the cafe for the Friends area. The circulation desk is tucked over here, but all browsing and new books are going to be the kind of things you have to walk through to get anywhere, with some self-check machines and reserves over here. And then beyond that is our periodicals area. This is going to be kind of a quiet garden kind of view reading area.
Excuse me, just one question. On this diagram here, we now have north at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
And south at the top.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. As far as so the west side comes out where story time with children corresponds with your west elevation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
North and south,
north
flip
on the
back
bottom.
and forth sometimes.
Gotcha.
But it's sort of, when we enter the building, we kind of put that up on the page, and that's kind of feels natural to us. So as you then come in, there's a large entrance into the children's area, and this entire end of the building here is for the children. You have computers and the service desk here as you come in. The nonfiction and the fiction are over here with some high windows. There is a hillside back here, so we are tucking up against the hillside, so there'll be still getting some light into this area here. The storytime and picture books will be over here, leading to kind of a nice sort of storytime area with a little sort of bit of built area here with the children's restrooms that give a protected area, and you can get more than 50 children in there, or 50 to 80 children in there for a story time. And that has windows and an entrance out here into a children's garden area that would be fenced in, and the children's librarian would be allowed to sort of open that up and let the kids out into the garden on a nice day. On the left side is the staff area. We have a book drop and return right here so that the books will come right into the processing area, making it very easy for staff to do. Our processing area is adjacent to that. Our receiving area, we're looking very closely at the flow of materials in and out of the building so that Peggy's staff can be utilized to their sort of best potential. We have our offices and staff restrooms, a break room, a conference room here. The conference room is for staff, but could also possibly be used by the public. And then mechanical areas, storage areas, the technical sort of the IT server room, and an area for the Friends. We have elevators taking you up to the second floor as well as a grand stair. The stair is one of those features that we're going to spend a lot of time designing and making something that's really quite sort of lovely and impressive. When you get to the second floor, you get to the top of the stairs here, and our service point is right here at the center. This is the area that has the
Excuse me if I could.
story window.
We've got a question for you on the previous slide.
On the previous slide,
Yes,
before
You
you
can
go
go
on.
back one. Thank you.
On the story time portion there, is that, I mean, when you look at the building from the outside, does that story time like jet out, or how does that work?
It'll extend out, yeah. We haven't quite finished how we're going to design it, but it would be a portion of the building that would extend past the rectangle of the rest. So it would be kind
and
of a
then round
feature.
it off, as you see it right now.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's the side of the building facing Town Hall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pageant Park. I mean, Pageant Park is
Pageant Park.
just up here.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's sort of tucked into the hillside because the hillside is kind of high there and it kind of wraps around. So upstairs is sort of more the adult areas. There's an opening in the floor here that brings the stair up, but we're probably going to have some glass around it to contain the noise between the two floors because that can sometimes be disturbing. The service point here with a large seating area on the west elevation, those large windows I was talking about would be here. So as you see, there's a nice view all the way through the building with stack areas on both sides. Back here is our history collections, and we'll be back in that along with tables and work areas. And there's a workroom here. We have our technology lab right here at the front of this. This is where you'll have computers, you'll have glass walls and doors, so that if you want to have a class in there, you can. But if you want to have it just for general computer use, it can be open for that purpose too. We have two group study rooms. This is very important for the function of the library, a larger one right here and a smaller one back here. This one sort of idea with this is much more sort of noisy. It's next to the teen area. The one back here is more for quiet. Really, in many ways, we've zoned the library so that it's noisier at this end and quieter at this end, so we can keep the patrons that want to have a preference for which way they want to be sitting. They can find its quiet spot. And then down here is our teen area. This is going to be a very sort of energetic and fun place for teens to go. It won't be completely closed off probably, but it will have some closed off, so whatever happens in there in terms of noise and activity, can be contained and can be watched very closely. There'll all be glass walls, so you'll be able to see right through there. But there's going to have the bay that comes out here with comfortable seating, computers, collections, and kind of fun furniture, interesting things for teens to use, laptops on bars and booth seating and things like that, and interesting lighting. It's going to be we're kind of excited about how nice that's going to be. And then back here is more of our fiction collection in here, with tables and seating through here, listening back here, the media collections sort of in the center, and that's it. Bathrooms and mechanical spaces and our elevators over here. So this is all sort of new for you. Any questions about the upper floor?
Thank you. Yes, Vice Mayor Burnett.
Are we just doing questions now, or questions and
No,
comments?
let's do questions and comments. Let's get it going.
Okay. You may have said this, and I might have missed it. The sight lines between the service point on the second floor and the teen and the restrooms, I'm assuming that those are pretty good sight lines over there because it's just going over the stairwell. Is that correct?
You'll be able to see straight through here. There won't be any. These will not be high. They'll be low, and you'll be able to look straight across at the entrance to the restrooms,
So they can
direct
monitor
on.
activity.
And then these will all be glass walls in here. So there'll be a good view in here. And I imagine staff will be spending some time, sort of walking through and making themselves useful. And
Yes, we will.
eye on things.
Mayor, I also had a question on, excuse me, on the first floor that I forgot to ask when you were on the first floor. Is there a public restroom on this floor other than in the children's area?
No. We had to sort of ration our restrooms and sort of keep them together. So we just have the children's here and the staff back here. Yeah, and we know it might be a little inconvenient, but we didn't want to spread them around. I guess it would be possible to put some, we could bring these over here and back them up, but if it seemed to be quite important to have that adjacent to this. We had originally conceived of it as more just sort of circulation space of people sort of walking through and going up, and now that we've got a quiet reading area here, maybe that would bear some reconsideration. We'll give it some thought.
So, Mayor, if I can just make my
continue.
two comments right now. One is that that would be something that I think would be an improvement because the periodical area is very attractive for folks to come and spend the day, and I think I've heard from library staff that they have quite a few people who come every day and sit there and read their newspapers and magazines, and sometimes those are older folks who might not necessarily feel comfortable going into the bathroom with the toddlers and the strollers and so on. So if we could work that out, that would be something that would be on my hit list. And then the other item is a little bit of concern is I understand the need to protect from the sun on the west side, but we really wanted to try to take advantage of the views of pageant grounds as much as possible. So I would hope as you do further shadow studies and sun studies, that if there's any way to make sure that we, especially on the second floor adult area, capture that connection with the outdoors, with pageant grounds, with as large of windows as we can manage without baking them to death, that would be a really good thing.
Yeah, I think there are actually pretty good windows in here. These are quite large. These are about 5 or 6 feet wide each. So that's about 10 or 12 feet of width of glass, and they're also quite tall. So wherever we have a seating area here, and here, we do have windows that look out. The places we don't have windows are where the stacks are on the wall. So we figured we could.
Perhaps they just
eliminate it
looked
there.
so meager when we were seeing the outside view because in comparison to the north side, which is so stunning. So.
Yeah, I think in fact when it gets done, it'll appear very light and bright. And
I think what the Vice Mayor and I are seeing, and perhaps other council members, is when you look at the west elevation on your page isn't numbered, but on the page with west elevation, you see there you go. You see so much impenetrable surface, and as she said, that particular side is looking out at pageant grounds. And if there's a possibility to add some more glass in there, that's the suggestion that's being given, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting. So that's being given. Also, her comment about a bathroom on the downstairs as well, I think given the fact that the children's section is on the downstairs, makes a lot of sense too for people that are there with young kids, the moms not having to take the kids up the stairs, up the elevator, whatever, to get to a bathroom. So if there's a place to squeeze that in somewhere, I know that's additional cost, and I know that means the elimination of some other type of service because you have a finite amount of space. But I think the point that she raised is a good one. Are notes being taken? You are. Okay, I didn't know who was doing that. Other questions, Council? Vice Mayor McNutt.
Okay, I just wanted. I can't find my on button. I just wanted to clarify. I thought we have small bathrooms in the children's area, primarily for the children and the families.
primarily for the children, and in fact, we probably would discourage sort of unaccompanied adults from coming in there and using them.
Yeah.
Generally speaking,
So the children and the families are taken care of, the staff's taken care of, it's just everybody else.
Okay.
I think we can address that relatively cost effectively.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Okay, anything else you wish to present before we move on to that part?
I think that's about it. As the assistant town manager said, we're working to stay on budget, being very careful about how our cost estimates are being done. Take that very seriously, and we will be checking our costs again and again at every stage in the design process to make sure that we are on budget and have contingencies to make sure that when we finally get to the bids that we're there where we need to be.
Thank you, and I apologize for not recognizing the RR on the downstairs next to story time as restrooms, and I apologize. I appreciate you not making fun of me. Thank you. All right. So we're done with that, and I think the action item before us is the consideration to authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute, but we have to talk to the public first. Okay. Not seeing any cards. Citizen Ray, come on forward.
Hey, Citizen Ray, have a card. What do you say?
You're on your way. Clock started. Go.
I'm going to give you an extra blue chip for tonight. I can't believe I'm the only public speaker. Here we have a $50 million investment by the town, and I'm the only speaker down here at the last go-around. Anybody there? Anybody care? I wonder. Yes. First off, $50 million investment, and you haven't said a word to the architect about lights in the parking lot. The lights out there now are an abomination. After a meeting, you pull out in your car. It's so dark out there, you run right up to people that are standing talking. They're not looking, and all of a sudden you're on them. And it's Josephine Brzezinski. And he's looking at me like crazy. Am I going to run him down? That's the big question in his eyes. So I want to tell you, somebody has to care about public safety. Somebody, please, do the job you're elected to do. Public safety is your #1 prerequisite. And new lights can't be a big deal. Can't be that big a deal. Number 2, I didn't hear a word about warm and inviting. And that's what how it was presented by the mayor. This library has to be warm and inviting. I don't see it as warm and inviting. And what I see is a hillside. And does it step into the hillside? No. Why doesn't it? Step the second story, then on the roof of the first story you put a place for outdoor reading in the summer, which is a live consideration. Where is the spot for outdoor reading in the summer? If you step the building, you'll have a little area in the front that you can make that happen easily. I don't see this architect as representing Los Gatos. I see him representing a nice building, but it doesn't lend itself to warm and inviting in Los Gatos. It's cold. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. I'll turn back to council for discussion. I will start off the discussion, and it's just a response to just what was said a minute ago when Citizen Ray asked, is anybody there? Does anybody care? I'd like to go on record for this council thanking all the people that have met and worked on this project over the years, and especially the Friends of the Library, who have committed to raising $2.1 million to help accessorize and fixturize this library project. There's obviously a whole lot of people out there and a whole lot of people that care, and we thank you. Council, motion for the action, which is to authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute the agreement before us. Councilmember Przynski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the recommended action.
Motion made to approve the recommended action by Councilmember Przynski, seconded by Councilmember Spector. Looking to fellow council members for any discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. We are now finished with item number 14, and unless my fellow council members have anything else they wish to say they haven't said already, this meeting is adjourned. Adjourned.